Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about episode 5 of The Acolyte. If you've seen any of my videos, you pretty much know how I feel about the show. And this episode is one of those things where I don't know if I would say it's created more division, but there's, I guess, more positives. So some people are like, oh yeah, it's, pretty good. Some people love it, some people hate it still. But it's definitely an episode I still want to break down, and I don't want to seem overly critical about it. But once again, I'm not going to hold back. And I'll be as fair as I can be. I'm never here to just tear media down. I like to be positive about media and film and TV, and I like to look for good things. So we'll see what comes out of that. But let's just say heavy spoilers. There's not much that happens in this episode, or really the whole show to begin with, but heavy spoilers. I'm going to talk about every little detail. So as predicted from the cliffhanger of the last episode, we got a lightsaber duel. Now, I'm not complaining. I love lightsaber duels. It's actually one of my favorite things about Star Wars. Lightsaber battles are awesome to me. And one thing I like about Star Wars, I think, as other people have pointed out in their critiques and in their analysis of the show and Star Wars in general, is that, yeah, it's cool choreography and it's fun to see the colors and the swords and all that stuff, but it's also something that usually drives the story forward, or it shows us more of the characters and who they are, or the dynamic, the relationship between other characters. So it's not just like a cool, fun to look at fight scene, usually. Now, the past several lightsaber fight scenes we've gotten, I don't feel like the story or the character aspect is there very much, if at all. But with this, let's just say I have a lot of issues with it in the story context, because I still think the story is pretty boring. Now, let's just start with maybe the technical aspect. Some of the choreography is pretty good. I know in my previous video I had mentioned my issues with the choreography, and as before, I'm not here to attack hardworking people who are trying to make cool, entertaining things for us. I appreciate it. Once again, the stunt performers, the actors, they do a great job with the choreography. That they're giving it their all. I love that. It kind of just opens up with the fight, and we've got this Sith. He's battling, I think there was 8 Jedi total, like at the end of the last episode, so he's fighting 5 or 6 of them at one time. Now, this is a bit of a cheat, but I'll give him some slack on it, because it is a very difficult thing to do, especially when you've got characters that are supposed to be like force sensitive and powerful and know how to use the force. They do a lot of wide shots at the beginning, and not just wide shots, they're wide shots at night and with a bunch of trees in the way. Because even if this Sith is overpowered, which he most certainly is, you're still fighting several Jedi Knights at one time. Maybe in comic books or video games or something else, or in the books, there's been situations kind of like that. And I'm not strictly against it, but I'm just saying the numbers are pretty crazy in terms of like 1 versus like 6. Like, that's pretty wild. Whatever. It's fast paced, there's good energy to the performance. I appreciate that. And I will say, as it goes along, I think the choreography actually does get better. Not like amazingly better, but I'll touch on those points. I'm going to be trying to talk about the story while I talk about this, because it's all one big lightsaber fight anyway. So eventually this Sith starts killing some of these Jedi. Now, I don't want to take away from you guys who like the show, okay? If you like it, you like it. And I'm trying, like I said, I'm trying to not be nitpicky here. It's just hard when you hopefully know the context, or at least if I'm a Star Wars fan, I know quite a bit about Star Wars and Jedi, and they didn't make any indication that this was a big group of like Padawans. They all look grown. They all look like Jedi Knights. Some of them might even be Masters, but at least Jedi Knights, fully trained. And it just seems like some of the deaths were a little easy. I can give you 1 or 2. Like, it doesn't matter, like, because you can bring up examples of other things, I'm sure, that you'd be like, well, if you're going to complain about this, like, listen, it's fine. But there were certain things that bothered me. Like, he stabs one Jedi, and then he force pulls another one into his blade behind that Jedi. Some people think that's like the coolest thing ever. I don't think it's strictly not cool, but I still don't like the execution of it. That's a big problem for me with this whole show, is the execution of certain potentially really cool ideas. And I just don't know why they literally don't think about it for like an extra 30 seconds of like, oh, actually, if we did it this way, it would come across as way better. At least I say way better. That's my personal opinion. So when he force pulls this other Jedi, this second Jedi, onto his blade, you can clearly see when they cut to him being force pulled, he's got his lightsaber in front of him, and then he feels himself being pulled and he goes, what? And you literally see his lightsaber arm go out to the side. He goes, what, like this. He like opens himself up. It's like, don't you think that he would feel it, keep it in front of him, and maybe like try to block the blade as he's being pulled into it, he could still die or miss or get severely wounded or you know, because he could at least like try to deflect, but it still goes into him, and then the Sith just like cuts his head off or something. You know, like, to you guys it may be a little nitpicky, and I understand that, but like, if you're gonna have the Sith be highly overpowered with his Force abilities, why can't you have the Jedi at least have somewhat normal Force powers? It's like all these Jedi don't even know how to use the Force at all. It is so weird. And they've touted this as like the peak of the Jedi. They're supposed to be the best right now. So why are they literally the worst? It makes no sense. So anyway, Jedi start dying. So now Sol jumps into the fight. And I'm wondering, when Smilo Ren blew everybody away at the end of the last episode, did he just like blow Sol like way further than everybody else? And then he had to just come running in later than everybody else? He's not really present at the beginning of the fight, which is very odd. So far, I've liked Sol. I've been fair about that. And I think the actor is really, really good. He starts fighting, some pretty good choreography. And Sol tells Yord, he's like, hey, you got to take Osha and get her to safety. Yord grabs her and they start going away. So anytime the characters talk, it's pretty cringy dialogue. You know, I think some of the actors do pretty good in certain scenes. It's like some of that dialogue, that's hard to pull off. Like, and that's a testament of a good actor, is if you get some dialogue that's not very good, but you deliver it well. And again, it's like suspension of disbelief. You know, even with the writing, it's like you can make some bad writing sound pretty good, actually. Anytime like Yord and Osha have a conversation, whether it's this episode or previous episodes, it is so awkward. It's always like Yord is trying to establish some sense of authority over her, and she's like, hey, we're friends, stop trying to tell me what to do. And she's like, hey, Yord, just think about this. If we do this, like, this is what we should do. And then he's always like puzzled or eventually concedes to her. But nothing usually ever comes of it anyway. It's always just like this very bland, weird, made up tension. So as they're running away through the woods, that was like 3 times, I want to say. It felt like 50. It was just like, stop having this same dumb conversation. She's like, hey, we got to go back and help them. And he's like, no, we got to get you to safety. And they keep running through the jungle. And then she's like, hey, we need to go back and help them. He's like, I'll restrain you if I have to. Sol gave me an order. Let's go. They keep going. So the 3rd time, she's like, hey, if we don't go back and help them, they're all going to die. And then it's like Yord has some crazy revelation, and he's like, yeah, that makes sense. So now they're going to go back and help. It's like, what? This is literally the 3rd time you've had this conversation, and you didn't know when that was the point of why you were taking Osha away from the battle, was the fact that everyone's gonna die and that she probably would die too. You don't understand how lightsaber duels work or Sith, Jedi conflict. Like, what did you expect? Him to just like want to have a sparring match, work on his skills, and be like, yeah, I'm a Sith, like, take me in. You got me. Like, what do you think is gonna happen? It took a 3rd conversation for her to point out what you already knew, to then disobey an order and bring Osha back with you. Like, why not even do something? It still would have been bad, but why not just be like, Osha, you go to the ship. We still need to keep you safe. I gotta go give them every chance they've got. He didn't even suggest that. It's like, no, I'll just bring you back with me. The person who doesn't have a lightsaber or any skills. And so lightsaber battle stuff is still happening. And then we get to May, and I don't even remember what happened to her strictly. I think she was hiding in Kilnaka's hut. But then Jeki finds her and tries to arrest her, and it's just like another thing that is so weird is she just starts fist fighting her. May is dangerous, she's trained by a Sith, and she's just fist fighting her and trying to put her in handcuffs. You can spam the comments if it makes you feel better. I know what was said in the 1st episode. I know what was said in this episode, and I just think it's complete nonsense. I don't buy into this like Jedi don't attack unarmed people thing. And it's not even about that. It's like you're forcing something in the writing to have a certain perspective about physical engagement with a dangerous person. It's not about whether someone is armed or not. It's about whether they're dangerous and need to be restrained or something like that. It's like the whole point of like learning, say, a martial art or being disciplined is knowing when to do something. So just because a Jedi has a lightsaber, it doesn't mean they're going to kill somebody, but it's a tool to guide conflict. So it's like, why wouldn't you use that tool, especially when you know she could pull out a lightsaber at any point, or more throwing knives. You don't know. Like, she might have a ton of weapons. Or even if she doesn't, it's like, hey, I mean business. Stop fooling around. It doesn't mean that a Jedi, every time they ignite their lightsaber, is going to kill somebody. Because also, they use their lightsabers to deflect laser bolts. You're not like strictly killing anybody when you do that. You're just defending yourself. So this whole thing that they're trying to do around like the Jedi don't attack unarmed people, it's like, stop with that. Stop. It's plot armor. It's contrived. It's just weird. I don't care. Like, so they have this hand-to-hand combat, which is fine. I'm not going to say anything bad about it. It wasn't terrible. It was pretty good. Not amazing, but it was pretty good. It was entertaining. I appreciate the work that the actors put into it. So honestly, I can't even remember exactly what happens in those moments. I might be saying certain things out of order. But at a certain point, Jecki and Yord get to the battle. Jecki has way more lightsaber skill, and heavy spoilers here, they both get killed, okay? And I'm sorry, I don't want to sound callous, but like, people have had really strange responses to this. Like, some people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. Like, the stakes, so and like the guts to do that. I'm like, I guess, but I felt like I kind of saw it coming, because if you're gonna have the line in Phantom Menace about the Sith being extinct for 1,000 years, it would kind of make sense to kill off all the Jedi involved in this story, so that all the other Jedi on Coruscant don't know that this happened. It's not that shocking to me, I guess, but also I'm just not invested in these characters. I'm not trying to not be, but like, Yord is just kind of dumb, man. He's kind of a know-it-all, but he really doesn't know anything, and he's not good at anything. And then there's no actual connection with him and Osha that feels real, or even between him and Saul or Jecki. There's no dynamic that makes me feel like he's an important player, that these people care about him, or that he cares about anyone. And so when he died, I was just like, okay, I don't know what you want me to really feel about that. Like, am I supposed to feel bad because he's a Jedi and he's a good guy and he died, and oh my gosh, one of the good guys died? Like, why would I care about you trying to make me feel something about a good guy dying, if you will, when all this writing has done is tried to make the Jedi look bad, or at least morally ambiguous? And you've done the same thing with the character of May and the witches on that dumb planet. It's like the morality, whether someone's good or bad, is always in flux. So why do I care if Yord or Jecki dies, or any of those Jedi? Because there's always been this notion of like, the Jedi aren't as good as they say they are. And it's like, do we know everything that happened on Brendok that night with the witches? Like, there might be some foul play with the Jedi. So it's like, why do I care? Like, these writers, man, it's like, do you really think that like I'm that dumb? That all of us, like the audience, that we're that dumb? And honestly, it just feels so manipulative. It's like, oh, we're gonna push all these buttons and make you feel a certain way about this. And like, look, we got you to feel this certain way, and you didn't expect to feel that way about it. And it's like, no, so many people are calling you out on this. And so then, you know, Jecki dies too. Or at least we think. She got stabbed by a lightsaber. But Disney doesn't really know how lightsabers work. So they might bring her back at any given moment. At least we are led to believe that she died at this point. We will see. So then Sol goes on to fight this Sith. At a certain point, his helmet got knocked off because of Jecki. And surprise, it's exactly who everyone thought it was going to be. Chimere, the apothecary dude. So listen, I'm going to state this again if you've never been on my channel. If you like this show, you are very welcome on my channel. You're welcome to make comments. It's a passionate fan base. Just keep it civil. Don't attack other people, okay? Don't hate on people for liking something or disliking something. It's perfectly fine to like it and to dislike it. We have preferences. I don't want to make you feel like if you like the show that you're not welcome here. You absolutely are. I just want to point out a couple of things from my perspective. Back to the Chimere thing. Everyone expected this, but I see all these people coping online that this show is a mystery. I disagree. Like, I don't think the show is mysterious. People complain about things and then everyone's like, oh, it's almost like it's a mystery. It's like, I see that comment all the time on all these platforms, and I'm like, that's not how good film or television works. You don't just constantly create questions and then essentially never answer them. And then you don't get to pretend that when you are trying to set up a mystery and it's very obvious what the answer actually is, that when it's revealed, it's like, see, it was a mystery. It's like, we knew. Like, there's nothing mysterious about it. It was very telegraphed. It was very obvious that this dude was gonna be the Sith. I don't mind certain questions being raised and being answered later. That's also a part of storytelling. But this idea that this show is mysterious and like, it's so simplistic, it's so basic, unless somehow you're gonna jam-pack these last couple episodes with character motivations and like what the connection is gonna be moving on, like if it's gonna connect to the prequels at all. There's a lot of strands going on that are simple, that don't make sense, and overall there's just no coherent story or mystery. The mystery is, where is the story? That's the mystery. Because now we know that Chimera is the Sith. Why does anybody care? I'm not trying to be mean, guys. Again, if you like it, I'm not trying to be mean. And I'll touch on some positives about this as well. I'll try, okay? But I don't really care because we don't really know who he is. We don't know what he wants. Now, I don't need some crazy lengthy 4-episode backstory of this guy. Just have like a couple scenes of dialogue or something. Like, does he have a master? Did he kill his master? Is he connected to Darth Plagueis or Palpatine or whatever? Like, do we know that? Just anything. Just give me anything. Like, obviously we know the Sith hate Jedi. But then he has this line of like, just wanting to do whatever he wants and then wanting to have an acolyte. Why? Like, why do you want an acolyte? Is it because of the rule of 2? And that's like a big deal to the Sith? Like, do you want an acolyte so then you can kill your master and then you're the master? Like, the emphasis on having an acolyte is just, I don't want to strictly say pointless, but it's like, why does the Jedi need to know this? I understand like a Sith isn't surely going to explain everything to a Jedi, but there's no like monologue or conversation with May or Osha or someone else afterward or with his master. There's nothing to really like give us an understanding of his motivation other than he's just a bad guy and that the audience knows about the rule of 2. I don't know why I'm supposed to care about this guy. So I'm gonna try and be a little positive here. I can't remember for sure the actor's name. I think it's Manny Jacinto, maybe, something like that. I think that guy does a great job. Even though he's like a bumbling kind of, foolish character to begin with, I still thought he did a pretty good job. His acting's still good. But his acting as the Sith, I think is really good. He does have a lot of good presence, and he has a really good tonal shift from the bumbling side of his character to the very intense, severe side of his character. So, props to him. Like, he did really good. And he had some lines that everyone's talking about how, like, cold they are and how cool and intense he is. And to me, honestly, that is all due to his acting. Some of his lines are okay, they're not bad, but some of them are still pretty awful. Yet his acting is really good and it makes it decent, so he does great. So does the actor who plays Saul. Diving back into the story a little bit here. So he's fighting Saul, and there's a certain point where Saul literally is about to take him out. He's got the saber like right here at his neck, and then Osha's like, Saul! And then he looks over at her, and then he loses the opportunity. And then there's also this part where Chimera doesn't have his lightsaber, and so Saul like deactivates his or throws his away, or it's so crazy. It's so ridiculous. Because what is to stop Chimera from force grabbing not only his own lightsaber but also like another lightsaber or Saul's lightsaber? It's just like this whole like a Jedi doesn't attack an unarmed person. It's like, he's not unarmed. Just because he's not holding a lightsaber right now, he was literally just killing a ton of Jedi, and he'll kill you too. So it's like, oh, I can't do anything. Rules. Like this, I don't know whose idea that was, who thought of that. As I've said earlier in the video, it's just absurd. It's absurd. It takes me out of it, because it's like, there's no solid examples, at least in the films. Now you might be spamming me in the comments with all the EU stuff. Let me touch on this as well, okay? Because a lot of fans like the EU stuff and the Legends. Nothing wrong with it. But we also know what canon is, most of us. We understand that canon is all of George's films, the Clone Wars show, and then essentially everything that Disney has made. We understand. But it's funny because I feel like even the people who aren't the biggest fans of the EU or the Legends, they're primarily like Disney Star Wars fans, which, again, I'm not trying to come at you here. I'm just saying there are some people like that who are mainly Disney Star Wars fans. they'll start talking about EU stuff and Legends stuff when it's convenient for them. So I don't know if there's some random expanded universe rule or Legends rule in some book or some comic book somewhere about this, like a Jedi doesn't attack an unarmed person. But if you're gonna be so intense towards the fans who love all that stuff when they're nitpicky, but then you're gonna use it when it fits you, please don't. Like, let's come together. Like, again, we can have discourse and disagreements, and like that's part of the fun of the fandom. Say what you want, have your opinions, like what you like, but I just wanted to kind of point out the silliness I feel like that is happening on both sides. It's like, listen, people like Legend stuff. Don't be mean to them for that. But then people who are gonna cherry pick from the Legends and Expanded Universe to try and support a show that's objectively not good in terms of writing, acting, production design, other things like that. It's like, that's pretty odd. Like, not saying you can't do it, I guess, but it's just, it's obvious what you're doing. I don't know. I'm not saying you have to be perfect. I'm not saying you gotta be just constantly consistent all the time. It helps. I wish everybody would try to do that, but whatever. So then we get a really, really awkward conversation between May and Osha. And I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. I don't care about all the cope between Osha and May in terms of like their dynamic and May actually caring for Osha. Because yet again, to bring up the point of like, it's a mystery, you gotta wait, there's still more episodes. It'll all make sense. I'm like, I don't care. Like, if I wasn't reviewing this show, I would not be watching it. Like, I would have stopped way early on. Like, within the first 2 episodes, probably. For sure by the 3rd episode. There's no way I would keep watching the show if I wasn't reviewing it and wanted to talk about it. The fact that people keep bringing that up, it's like, please stop. She clearly said, I'm going to kill you in the 3rd episode when they were children. And then she's trying to tell Osha, it's like, oh, the Jedi have brainwashed you, I care about you. And also, it doesn't make sense for May to have resisted arrest from Jecki when the previous episode she was like, oh, I'm gonna turn myself in. The Jedi will take me in and the Master won't be able to find me, it'll be fine. But then when Jecki comes to arrest her, she's like, nah, I hate you again. What? Does anyone like people, Dave Filoni, where are you? People who are still like Dave Filoni supporters, fans or whatever, we all know that if you've been keeping up with this, like one of the writers said that Dave basically checks off all the scripts. Like, he gives notes. Like, he lets them write what they're gonna write, but he gives notes. And so it's like, so he's okay with all this stuff. It's ridiculous. It does not make sense for her character to be so wishy-washy. Like, all the time. It's like, there's no motivation. And I guess this is what I'll try to sum it up with, because I'm so tired of talking about this now. And I've talked way too long, so I apologize. Thanks for hanging in there, guys. Appreciate it. If you've enjoyed the conversation so far, feel free to give a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. I'm not trying to pick on actors and their acting, but people have said it before, and I don't strictly agree, but I don't disagree about, you know, the performance of May and Osha. A lot of people have said they seem almost like the same character. There's not a lot of differentiation. I get those complaints, those arguments, but I think it is also hard for an actor when the writing is so razor thin in terms of character development. It can be difficult to try and form differentiation and give an authentic performance when you're essentially acting with yourself. But as a professional, it is your job also to develop backstory and use all your skills as best you can to make something compelling. And I just don't find either character compelling on their own, especially when they're together. It's like they're worse somehow when they're together. A couple more comments on the lightsaber stuff, because it is essentially one big lightsaber episode. I think some of the choreography is pretty good. I said that earlier. It's definitely the best like choreography that Disney has done in terms of lightsaber duels. I still don't think it's as good as the prequels necessarily, and that's not me trying to be obstinate or just like, I just love the prequels and I'm not gonna concede anything. Like, no, this choreography is pretty great, but there's issues with it. And then, but again, as I mentioned before, when you're talking about the context of story within these battles, the story is so bad, it detracts from it. So technical skill, choreographers did a really good job. Even the actors, they did a good job, but it's still like, it's not the most interesting lightsaber duels I've seen. I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm not trying to say you can't love it. If you love it, go for it. Because it was entertaining. Like, I was like, finally, someone was like, let's try to do a good lightsaber duel is what it felt like. So I appreciate the effort for sure. So that's great. To sum all this up though, guys, you know my thoughts. This show is so boring to me. The characters are so boring, but more than that, it's just morally bankrupt. Like, why should I want to be entertained by something that has no firm stance on good or evil when it literally takes a character who's supposed to be evil, but then no, now she's good, but no, now she's bad again, now she's good. It's like, well, it depends on how you look at it. She's bad, but in actuality, she's good because of all of the people around her who did things to her. So she's a victim, so she's actually good. Like, it's just like, no, I'm not gonna pretend that this should be the standard of art anymore. I don't mind complexity. I don't mind nuance. I don't mind suggesting a different, perspective on things. But when there's no weight, when there's no actual undergirding of story, when there's no character motivations, when you're not actually saying something important, like, this is why I'm getting you to think this way. This is why I want to show you my perspective. There's no actual answers. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just moral ambiguity over and over and over and over. That doesn't serve a purpose in terms of entertainment. It doesn't serve a purpose in terms of like actually trying to send a message to the world about how we should live our lives. If anything, I just think it brings about confusion in general. I'm not saying the people watching are unintelligent. Quite the opposite, actually, and that's why I've been so vocal about this show. Is like the writers are writing like everyone is like ignorant or not actually paying attention or something, or that they can just do whatever they want in their own show and in the canon of Star Wars, and that we're all just supposed to eat it up. It's like, you don't have to love this if you don't like it. Yet again, if you do like it, you can like it. I don't need to get blue in the face over it. I'm giving you my thoughts. And the reason I've been hitting hard on this is in case you've never seen any of my videos before or heard much from me, I care so much about filmmaking. I care so much about storytelling and meaning in storytelling and what art does for us, how it helps us. It can be rough out there in the world, depending on where you live. Yeah, you might be comfy or whatever, and so this is just entertainment to you. You're not a huge fan, it's just whatever. But for some people, movies and TV shows and stories, they mean a lot to them, especially in the context of huge fandoms. So it's important for me as a storyteller when I'm making a film or when I'm writing something that, yes, first and foremost, I want this to be entertaining, I want it to be fun, or whatever genre it's in, I want it to have a big impact in conveying whatever emotion or thought I'm trying to get across. But I want people to be able to engage in a way that makes them feel uplifted, because you can talk about heavy subject matter but still give somebody hope. You can talk about something silly and goofy or whatever, but still give them something to chew on and to process. Art is a great vehicle for us to understand our surroundings and people around us, because we watch character relationships and we're like, oh yeah, I know someone like that. Or it's like, yeah, like the way this character forgave this character, like I need to talk to that person, and tell them I forgive them and see what that will do for their life. Like we learn life lessons. There's nothing to be learned from this show. I'm sorry, like there's no value in it. So those are my thoughts, guys. Thank you once again for hanging around. I always appreciate it. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you found value in it. Feel free to drop comments below. Again, be respectful. There's no reason to attack individuals over something that we're just discussing and hopefully having fun with. If you like the show, feel free to comment. If you don't like the show, feel free to comment. Thanks again, guys. I always appreciate your time. If you found any value in this conversation or in this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.